HMS Zealous was a Z-class destroyer of the Royal Navy, built in 1944 by Cammell Laird. She served during the Second World War, participating in operations in the North Sea and off the Norwegian coast. Before taking part in some of the Arctic convoys, she saw action during the Suez Crisis in 1956, attacking Egyptian ships, and was still active by the outbreak of the Six-Day War in 1967. She was sunk several months after the conflict by missiles launched from several small Egyptian missile boats. This made her the first vessel to be sunk by a missile boat in wartime. It was an important milestone in naval surface warfare, which aroused considerable interest around the world in the development of small maneuverable missile boats. Second World War. Zealous was one of 4 British destroyers of the Home Fleet that rescued 525 Norwegians, who had been hiding from German patrols in caves on the snow-covered mountains of Soria Island, Norway for 3 months. The rescue involved the destroyers on a daring race 60 miles behind enemy lines. The Norwegians were safely evacuated to the British port of Gorick. Zealous made 2 trips from the UK to Russia as part of the Arctic convoys taking supplies around Norway to Kola. Under the guidance of Commander R.F. Jessel RNDSO, she ran the gauntlet of German U-boats and aircraft. On 5 April 1945 she was involved in an attack on a convoy entering the Jossing Fjord on the coast of Norway. 1 merchant ship was sunk and 2 were damaged. When the Germans were on the brink of capitulation, the ship was ordered to Copenhagen. There she was mistaken by excited German soldiers as a German destroyer sent to evacuate them. Service as a Latin sinking. From October 1945 until August 1946, Zealous served in the 4th Destroyer Flotilla as part of the Home Fleet. From 1947 until 1950 she was held in reserve at Devonport. Between 1950 and 1951 she underwent a refit at Cardiff. Between 1953 and 1954 she was held in reserve at Penarth. In 1955 the UK sold Zealous to Israel, which commissioned her into the Israeli Navy as Zealous in July 1956. On the morning of 31 October, in the midst of the Suez Crisis, the Egyptian destroyer Ibrahim al-Awwal shelled Haifa harbour. A counter-attack by the French destroyer Kersaint and by the Israeli Yafor and Eilat forced the Egyptian destroyer to steam back towards Port Said. It was then also attacked by a pair of IDF AF-Oregons and a Dakota. The crew of the badly damaged vessel finally capitulated, and the Israelis towed the ship to Haifa. It later became the Haifa in the Israeli Navy. On a patrol during the night of 11–12 July 1967, Eilat and 2 Israeli torpedo boats came across 2 Egyptian torpedo boats off the Romani coast. They immediately engaged the vessels and sank both. Eilat sank on 21 October 1967 in Mediterranean international waters off Port Said in the Sinai, hit by 3 Soviet-made Styx missiles launched by Egyptian missile boats. An Egyptian Cammell-class missile boat positioned within the harbour at Port Said fired 2 missiles at the Israeli destroyer. Eilat's radar did not reveal any suspicious activity or movements because the Egyptians launched the missiles from within the port. Eilat's captain ordered evasive action when the missiles were detected, but the first missile hit the ship just above the waterline at 17:32 hours. 2 minutes later the second missile struck, causing additional casualties. While Eilat began to list heavily, the crew tended to the wounded and engaged in rescue and repair operations while waiting for additional ships of the Israeli Navy to come to their rescue. But around an hour later another Egyptian Cammell-class missile boat from Port Said harbour fired 2 more Styx missiles at Eilat. The third missile hit Eilat amidships, causing more damage and further fires, while the fourth went astray and crashed in the water nearby. Eilat sank about 2 minutes later. Out of a crew of 199, 47 were killed and more than 100 were wounded. Aftermath of the sinking just months after its defeat in the Six-Day War caused brief jubilation in the Arab world, and crowds gathered to cheer the two missile boats upon their return to port said. In Israel, angry crowds surrounded Chief of Staff Yitzhak Rabin and newspaper editorials demanded vengeance. 67 hours after the attack, Israel retaliated by shelling Port Suez with heavy mortars. Two of the site's 3 oil refineries were destroyed, with the smallest one left standing. The refineries produced all of Egypt's cooking and heating gas, and 80% of its oil. Other areas of the city were hit. Israel ignored or pleaded technical difficulties to UN requests for a ceasefire. The Soviet Union sent 7 warships on their courtesy call to Egyptian ports to dissuade Israel from further attacks. The sinking of Eilat by surface-to-surface missiles inaugurated a new era in the development of naval weapons and the formulation of naval strategy throughout the world. Though not highly publicized at the time, the sinking had a considerable impact on the Israeli Navy. Israel started to develop plans for German-influenced ship designs better suited to missile combat. Principally small and efficient boats armed with missiles, able to patrol Israeli shores and undertake offshore operations at high speed, while at the same time able to evade enemy tracking and missiles. The resulting focus on new, more agile, missile-armed boats would reap major benefits for the Israeli Navy some 6 years later during the Yom Kippur War. A set of torpedo tubes removed from Eilat before her sinking are preserved at the Clandestine Immigration and Naval Museum, Haifa, and a monument to the fallen of Eilat was established just outside the museum, the work of sculptor Yigal Tumarkin.